At She Can, we tell women's stories. We show how women got to where they are today. And that is super interesting, really inspiring, motivating, and often mentoring. I'm really excited to talk to Isabella Mandis today. Isabella, welcome to She Can. Thank you for telling your story. You're the founder and CEO of Girls into VC. You're a student at Harvard, a sophomore, and your vision is to narrow the gender gap in venture capital. You also connect mentors with mentees and you introduce investors to female-led startups, which is really important work considering that women get less than 2% of VC money, and the percentages of women in VC, in the VC world, is really, really tiny. You also managed to have more than 4,000 members with that now. Tell us a bit more about yourself and how you thought up Girls into VC and what your mission and vision is.
Thank you. Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here. I'm a big supporter of showing women what they can be and people and hopefully inspire people. So I'm really excited to be able to do that today. So like you mentioned, I'm Isabella. I'm a sophomore at Harvard studying statistics with a focus in data science and a minor in computer science from New York City originally. Always been really passionate about the tech space, knew that was what I wanted to go into. So when I was younger, learned how to code and then started getting involved in entrepreneurship things, started reaching out to founders, started working for a couple different startups and really, really fell in love with that. I feel like it inspired me every day after school. I would kind of get home and try to do some work in order to support founders. Specifically, I was so interested in the fact that you could be a college founder and be kind of revolutionizing the world. And only be a couple years older than I was at the time. And so as I started as I got into Harvard and knew I was going to come here, started exploring different ways that I could kind of get involved with the entrepreneurial scene. And also I had a good friend of mine who was in the Dorm Room Fund, which is a program where people invest in students, where students invest in other students. And so I thought that was really cool and wanted to do something similar when I got to campus. So joined a lot of venture capital organizations, started realizing that I was the only girl in the room and didn't like that. I went to an all-girls school growing up, so it was a big adjustment for me. And then I started going to different meetings, started connecting with people, realized that since I didn't have that community in the organizations that I was a part of, I would kind of look outside of that. So started reaching out to women in the field on LinkedIn or different places, trying to get to know them. And then also was meeting other girls that went to these things. And, when there are only a few girls, everyone kind of sticks together. And so I wanted to connect the amazing insights I was gaining from my mentors with these women. And then Girls into VC kind of spun out of that. In terms of our mission, so we're the first organization dedicated to bringing young women to venture capital. So wanting to close the gender gap, like you said, by bringing skilled, passionate young women ready to revolutionize the industry. So we do things like education, resources, mentorship, like you mentioned, and just trying to empower this next generation. So yeah.
Which is hugely exciting, Isabella. Give us a few of the terrifying data that is holding women back.
Yeah, so I mean, as you mentioned, less than 2% of venture capital dollars go towards women-led startups. I think now it might even be down to less than 1%, which is crazy. It's actually like decreasing with time, which is crazy statistic. On the VC side, so I think that's a statistic that is commonly like discussed or in the media. Something that isn't really discussed is what's happening on the other side. So what is the percent of venture capitalists who are actually inputting their dollars into these companies? And that really interested me because yes, it's true that so many little women are getting money, but then also like, okay, well, who's deploying that capital? So in terms of statistics, a woman account for only 9% of venture capitalists, 8% of partners, and 7% of board seats at firms. So obviously like a very low number. So, and 9% is for VCs, but the percent that are making actually like the investment decisions is much lower. So yes, so that's what we're trying to do. And I think one issue that I'm trying to solve is that a lot of women don't even know that this is like an option and something that they can go into, and you can't be something unless you see it. And so trying to kind of create that in our program.
Which is amazing, Isabella, and really so much needed because representation matters, and you gotta see, As you said, it's easier to be what you can see. And if you can't see it, it's so much harder. Tell us what your main motivator is, Isabella, going forwards. Now, you've set this up, you've been very successful with it. What is your motivator going forwards?
Yeah, I think just trying to make a bigger impact and trying to set up girls into VC in a way that kind of two things. One that like can outlive me and is something that can kind of stand the test of time. So trying to create different things that can kind of do that. So for example, we're launching a fellowship. Actually, our first meeting is this Saturday, which I'm super excited for. So that's really like we have a curriculum, we have a program. So those are things that like really can be repeated and trying to do as much like documentation so that it can really be replicated. And then also trying to build smaller communities within the organization. So in the fall, we're planning on launching at many different college campuses in different cities as well. So just generally trying to make it more of like an intimate space while still being connected to the larger organization.
So, Isabella, what are your challenges? What are the things where you're struggling with as girls into VC, and how do you overcome them?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that, I'm doing this while in school, so it's really hard to juggle everything and also other extracurriculars I'm doing. I don't want to give up. And so just kind of doing that. I think also this is something that kind of anyone who starts something can relate to, but it's really hard to start something of your own because you always feel like there's more you could be doing and more things that you like. I want to provide as much to the community as possible. So I think that's the hardest thing is kind of being in your own brain and thinking every second like, oh, I need to do this or this, but also recognizing that I have to do homework and I have to go to class and I have to do other commitments that I have as well.
Isabella, so tell me how you do that, because that is obviously already a crazy situation. You're a full-time student, you want to have a college life. How many are you and how does it work?
Yeah, so we have a team now. So when we started, it was just me, and now we have a team of about 20 college students, a couple postgrad, but mostly college students that are helping me build the organization. So those really range from people running each of our individual programs or doing our social media or doing our blog posts or doing our podcast. So all things that I've been kind of been able to pass down and over. And I think one, that's something super important because I think I learned so much about the field by writing the blog posts and interviewing everyone for our podcast and doing all of that. So I think that handing it over is just, I mean, our women that are doing this and putting everything together are just so incredible. So I'm really happy to be able to kind of give them that opportunity. But also, it's hard when you start something and then have to kind of hand it off to someone else and trust that they're going to do what you want to do, but also like I recognize that they have goals that maybe I don't have, but there everyone that's like working with me is our audience. So also like trusting their vision as well.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Isabella, so what top qualities would you say you have? You're obviously bright, you're at Harvard. What do you think you have that makes you good at that, at what you deliver?
Oh, that is probably the hardest question I've ever been asked in a podcast or anything. I think I'm just dedicated and a hard worker and I like to do different things and I like to start stuff and I like to make a difference in the world. I think honestly it's probably the latter. I think the different things that I've done throughout my whole life have been different depending on what I'm interested at the time. And now that's VC and something that I've discovered. When I was younger, it was something else. But I think in everything that I've done, I've always seen like what's wrong with it and tried to fix it and make it better.
You're obviously a visionary, Isabella, and maybe one wouldn't say that at your age or even as a woman, right? Most women I ask this question, and no matter what their age is, they're like, "Oh my God, she asked me what I'm good at. What am I good at? I don't know." And so you think you're the CEO of a bank. What do you mean? Or you're a politician. What do you mean? So it's a question that I ask on purpose because I want people to reflect on it and to be proud of that. And that's
Yeah.
this is this thing. You are good at those things. And so, say it. and say it with confidence. So it's the hardest thing, and we all grapple with that. I grapple with that absolutely 100%. I feel uncomfortable when people ask me that. What are you most proud of to date, Isabella?
Yeah, I think we did a conference in November, and that was really, really exciting to kind of bring everyone together. And we had guest speakers, and I felt like that was like a culmination of a lot of what we've done. And so I think that was really, really exciting. And the fact that, I mean, it was a whole day event. So the fact that people like, it was on a Sunday. The fact that people like lost their whole Sunday. I know my Sundays are very sacred to me. So the fact that people would kind of give that up, and even like people traveled across the country to come. So it was a really incredible, and I really love that experience.
Isabella, and what top tips would you have to other, young girls who have an idea? What top tips would you give them?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that people don't feel comfortable starting something. And I know that at least for me, I'm a very much perfectionist, like to plan everything out. And I think at a certain point, I would have spent years probably planning everything to launch in the way I wanted it to, but instead I just kind of took the leap and announced girls into VC and like had nothing and was just like, if you're interested, let me know, and kind of spiraled from there. So I would say do that. Also, like reach out to people on LinkedIn. I've met so many incredible mentors of mine through that. Literally like I could probably, there's so many amazing people that I've met and have been so supportive of me, and literally came from like cold reaching out to them on LinkedIn or being at an event and going up to them and following up with an email, like so many different ways. But I think just kind of taking that risk is really rewarding.
So, what are your plans and your goals, Isabella? What is life after Harvard going to look like, and what's your vision with Girls into VC going forwards?
Yeah, that's a question I get a lot. And I think my answer is that if you would ask me a year and a half ago what I would be doing today, I would never say this. And so even if you asked me a couple months ago, so I think that so many things change and it's really hard for me to predict the future. For Girls into VC, I hope to be launching in different clubs, doing more of this fellowship that we're running, and really having that be very frequent and be able to impact a lot of girls interested in VC. In terms of me personally, after Harvard, I have like 2.5 years left here, so really, who knows? But yeah, just hopefully like really enjoying my classes, spending time with my amazing friends that I've met, trying to prioritize them as well, and hopefully working on Girls into VC and maybe even doing more stuff too.
Yeah, sounds great. Sounds super mature, this answer. Um, who are your role models, Isabella, and who are you inspired by and motivated by?
Yeah, there's so many people. Honestly, I think firstly, my parents are people that I really look up to and have always been there, are always there for me. I know literally any idea I have or anything with Girls into VC, I always call them and are like, what do you think of this? Out? And my mom is specifically has been so helpful in terms of all of the like legality and registering and all of that stuff and what that looks like. She's been really incredible. I think also, honestly, just like all of my friends at Harvard, everyone here is so passionate about very, very different things. But I think seeing everyone and whatever they're interested in and kind of doing 150% and starting cool things and working on cool startups and all of that really motivates me.
Amazing, Isabella. Thank you so much for telling us your story today. I'm super excited by what you're doing and super excited to see where that's going to lead and wishing you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.